four sets of squares going, and he was on two of them. So he won 700 and something bucks.
Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting for Monday, February 10th, 2014. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Brado?
Here.
Mr. Capral?
Here.
Mr. Swikowski is asked to be excused. Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. York?
Here.
Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkust?
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including approval of regular board meeting minutes of January 27th, 2014, and workshop minutes of January 21st, 2014, approval of the bills in the amount of $657,471.23, approval of the December 2013 revenues and expenditures report, and approval of the Knights of Columbus annual Tootsie Roll Drive, April 11th through 13th, 2014.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the bills in the amount of $657,471.23.
All right, there's been a motion. Is there support?
Support.
All right, support by Mr. Capral. A discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda would be the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, we've been asked to add a closed session for the discussion of the lawsuit, Maynard versus Charter Township of Harrison. I might propose that as item D2 on the agenda. Otherwise, if there are no other changes, I'll be looking for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda as amended.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello, a support by Mr. Witt to approve the regular agenda with the addition of item D2. Any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda, announcements. The Harrison Township Public Library will be hosting multiple events this month. Mosaic Garden Arts and Crafts will be held Wednesday, February 26th at 7 p.m. Please join the library for a visual presentation and discussion of the origins of mosaic, how it is used in the garden, and how you can use it in making crafts for your home. Presentation is free and refreshments will be provided. Tales with Tales will be Saturday, February 22nd, starting at 11 a.m. Children will have the opportunity to read with Patty, a licensed, certified, and insured therapy dog. Pre-registration is required. You can register for the library events, or any of these library events, by calling 586-329-1261, or you can stop in the library and sign up. Any children that attend these events must be accompanied by an adult. For any information or additional information on any township event, you can always call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445, or visit our website. We also have our Parks and Recreation event coming up, the Family Bowling Day, February 22nd, 2014, at Total Sports. Check-in begins at 12:30 p.m. and bowling starts at 1 p.m. For $10 per person, there's 2 games of bowling, pizza and pop, and a raffle ticket for prizes. We're looking for the bowlers to be at least 6 years old, and the event is limited to the first 80 bowlers. And you can contact our trustee, Frank Capral, 466-1400, extension 1550, or you can email him, fcapral@harrison-township.org. Any more to share on that?
I think you covered it.
All right, great. Well, thanks for taking care of that event. All right, Are there any other announcements? Next on the agenda would be item B1, approve Wade Trim to provide engineering of the Bay Haven sanitary sewer pump station and force main at a cost not to exceed $69,900. Board members, at the January 21st workshop, we discussed two significant infrastructure projects in need of immediate attention. One is the Bay Haven sanitary sewer pump station and force main. We've applied for a grant to fund 90% of the engineering costs. If we receive the grant, it will reimburse 90% of our engineering expenses back to January 1st, 2014. Further, regardless of whether we receive the grant or not, the work needs to be performed. Wade Trim has supplied a letter outlining the scope of work with their estimate of, or their quote for the work of $69,900. There are two items here. We separated them because they come from different funds. But of course, Mr. Newmer from Wade Trim is here in the event that board members have any questions about the project. Are there any questions, or is there a motion this evening?
Maybe it makes sense just to give a brief overview as to what they are in case there's somebody that's watching that didn't catch the workshop.
There you go, sounds good.
Right.
Dave?
You wanna give the explanation or should I? Okay.
Gotta specify which day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have multiple days. I'll give it a shot.
How you gonna do it?
No, that's fine, you guys go ahead, just
Turn on
tell
your
us.
mic.
Yeah.
Is
make
the
sure-
blue light on?
Blue light is on, yes.
And you're good.
All right. Board members, as the supervisor said, we had a work study on this the other day. The Bay Haven project consists of replacing the Bay Haven pump station. It's at Bay Haven and North River Road. It's a pump station that serves about 2,200 homes in the community. There's a very long force main. The Bay Haven station pushes over half a mile down North River Road and then across over to Chart Street.
Under the Clinton River.
Underneath the river, right. The force main that runs that distance has had several breaks in it, and when it was repaired, it was noted that the pipe was in very poor condition. The pump station mechanicals themselves are over 40 years old and in need of replacement. One of the what makes this project very critical in terms of pump station projects is that that does pump over half a mile and crosses the river, so there's not a convenient place should that station fail that we could bypass pump to emergency pump to get around it. If that station failed, we would have to, literally bring in trucks and pump into trucks and to keep the sewer moving until we could get a fix there. So it's one of the items that came out as a very high priority on our list of things to do.
But quite possibly, the highest priority sanitary sewer project currently on our books.
Yes.
It is, yes, sir.
What's gonna be the value of the project at the end?
The cost of construction.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Cost of construction?
I'm sorry.
400 to 450, it says.
Yeah.
The Bay Haven was
Oh, I
estimated
read
between
that.
400 and
I
450.
must have overlooked it.
Yep, and the funding for that would come out of the Township Capital Improvement Fund in the sewer.
And that includes the complete pump station, wet well, and replacing the asbestos cement force main and the river crossing, across from Selfridge. So that's the complete project. As I said, we have infiltration issues that are visible at this station, not to mention the delicacy of that pipe that we've already had breaks near the river, which could be just disastrous, from a environmental standpoint with the Corps of Engineering and the DEQ.
Also, this project is a part of our SAW grant application. And maybe refresh the board and the residents. Was that a 5-year program, Mr. Newman?
Yeah, the SAW grant program, the legislature has allocated $450 million over a 5-year program. For the first year, they've got $97 million allocated to the program. The DEQ has indicated that they're going to take applications on a first-come, first-served basis. The very first day that they allowed applications to come in, they received, I think, 673 or thereabouts applications valuing about $540 million. So we've got about 20% more requests than there are funding available for the program. what that means for the township is that you've got about an 80% chance to get funded through that program sometime in the next 5 years. And should you get funded, the costs that we would be incurring at this point would be reimbursable.
Right. And you'd also indicated that of the total number of projects, it is possible that through an error in the application process, some of those applications may prove to be not valid or not meeting the scope. So our percent of being successful in getting that could be even greater than 80% if any of those other applications are rejected.
That's correct.
So, bottom line, we have a high likelihood of 90% of this cost being reimbursed through a state grant program, basically designed to encourage communities like us to address some of these failing or deteriorating infrastructure issues.
Make a motion to approve Wade Trim to provide engineering of the Bay Haven sanitary sewer pump station force main at a cost not to exceed $69,900.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Brado. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda is item B2, pretty similar, but on the storm sewer side. Board members also discussed at the January 21st workshop, we talked about the Beechwood Stormwater Pump Station and Force Main. Similarly, we have applied for a grant to fund 90% of the engineering costs, and it is retroactive. So the same grant, the same application included engineering work for this project. And as a result, we have a high likelihood of being reimbursed for that amount of money. Wade Trim has outlined the scope of work with a cost of $87,600. They did include an estimate of the work necessary to identify key areas of the Vanter de Buff, Pettit Conlet, and Savan drains, which would likely need to be cleaned out for improved flow of stormwater at a cost not to exceed $15,000. That number is not a hard number. As Mr. Newmer explained, it's more of an estimate, and that does not qualify, that is not a part of our grant application, correct?
That's correct.
So, but as we discussed, if we do proceed with this stormwater pump station rehabilitation or reconstruction, the funding would quite possibly be through a special assessment district. It's a rather large drainage district. And one of the things that we discussed in the workshop, you may recall, was that if we're going to ask the folks in this drainage district to contribute to improving the drainage, there are going to be some of those residents who are sensitive to the fact that it's not improving the drainage at the corner of their street or in their immediate backyard because some of the drains have choke points in them. So the hope would be that as opposed to undertaking the cost to clean all the drains, we might be able to identify key strategic places where some drain cleanup could be done that would drastically improve the flow to this detention basin. And that's what the additional estimate of $15,000 is. It's certainly my recommendation that if we're going to look at this pump station, we also look at the network of drains that lead into this detention basin so that we get the maximum amount of performance out of this drain investment. Mr. Newmer, I don't know if there's anything to share on this project. I know you talked about hydraulic study and different things that are required to do this project.
Yeah, the Beechwood Pump Station, one of the big problems with it is when it was originally designed for the Vanter de Buff drain, it served about a 335-acre area. Now with the construction of the Harrison Relief Drain, this pump station serves an area of over 900 acres, so the tributary area has tripled since that drain was constructed. But the pump station hasn't been retrofitted and capacity improved to keep up with that. With the Harrison Relief Drain, there was some additional storage added into the system with the overflow ditch and the pipe network underneath that holds water temporarily. But what we're finding is with the failure of the pump station, we've only got one pump out of two running now. The pumps are running on a non-standard electricity, so it's difficult to find pumps in that range. And it's taking the township literally weeks to pump that water out. Right now, we're supplementing what we've got there with several gas backup emergency pumps, essentially. It's very expensive to run those pumps because they run on gasoline and they have to be manned. So we have to have staff out there watching them and making sure that they're running and they have gas and whatnot. So it's a very expensive proposition for the township to be supplementing this pump station, which has essentially failed.
And the board may recall that Mr. Axtell had given a chart showing the costs of operating the backup pumps over the last, gosh, I don't know, 6 or 8 years or so, but in some years it exceeded $20,000 that we're spending in the gasoline, maintenance of the pumps, and no small part of it is overtime to have guys go out and fill gas pumps. So we've got an infrastructure issue. Our water and sewer department has done the best they can to keep it going, but it's well beyond its useful life, and it's becoming very costly for us to keep it running the way it is.
Can I ask a question? Maybe this question's been answered before, I just can't recall. I mean, this project's been on the table for probably since I've been here 9 years, so. Why don't we just get new pumps? If it's costing us $20,000 or whatever, why don't we
Well,
retrofit some pumps in there temporarily? I don't know, I'm just,
Sure, well,
that'd be the logical.
some of it, and that sounds like it would be a simple project, but it's not. The pumps that are in there are old, they're outdated, they're an odd style pump. They're actually what's considered a propeller style pump instead of an impeller pump. They have a shaft that goes all the way down, pumps the water up, and they're completely undersized. One has been failed basically the entire time that I have been here, which is over 15 years. And the station simply was not designed to take this volume of water. We couldn't get pumps big enough in this particular housing to take the water that is there. That's why it literally takes weeks with everything I've thrown at it. Gas pumps, the electric pumps, we burned up. I came to the board, I know you weren't at the meeting, Mr. York. I brought up proposal, Mr. Brock and I, to buy emergency sewer pumps, electric sewer pumps. They have been out there since we purchased them. One of them is completely dead, cannot be repaired. The other one is, the bearings are making so much noise that it's just a matter of time. But I have no choice but to keep going and keep using gas. But the answer to your question is we cannot get pumps in there large enough to take that volume of water. Would it help? Yes, sir, it would.
Do you know what I mean? If you have no pump,
Yeah.
having a pump is better than no pump, I guess is
There were-
my.
There were a couple other things. I recall one of them is that the pump station and the level that it can pump relative to the size of the detention basin and the design of the basin, it simply can't drain the basin. So that when that pump station has pumped as much water as it can, the basin is still holding water, which defeats the purpose of the size of the design of the basin. We want to be able to drain it further. Also, in the workshop, we learned that the stop log dam that we have, we're currently pushing water over and gravity flowing it out to the lake.
Right.
And the problem is that the corridor underneath Metro Parkway that handles that flow is full of silt, and it doesn't flow, so it doesn't flow properly. Part of this proposal would be to force that water through a force main all the way to the other side, basically beyond where the pedestrian bridge is along that divide. So and then on top of that, currently right now, there's only 208 power. It's an inefficient style of power. There's really a need to upgrade quite possibly to a 480 volt, 3-phase power there to make the pumps more efficient. And by the time you do all those things, you're not far from basically rebuilding the whole thing.
Oh, no, I understand that. I'm just saying if it is, when everybody brings these things and it's such an emergency, it would just seem to me that,
Well,
we,
as you said,
throw a
this has
pump
been
in
an
there or
emergency
something
for-
better than none,
This has been an emergency for a number of years, as you stated, and now this with the opportunity of the SAW grant and the whole big picture, and obviously the change in design of the drain itself, taking on, 900 plus acres as opposed to the 300 plus acres, things have changed over the years in the number of times it's been brought to you. So now it's,
Probably the third or fourth time I've seen this project.
yes.
This would be the first time that we have a chance to fund the engineering at a 90% level with straight grant money, and a high likelihood of getting that grant. I think that's one of the things that's different about this proposal compared to previous proposals.
I'll make a motion to approve Wade Trim to provide engineering of the Beechwood Stormwater Pump Station and Detention Pond and evaluation of the drainage of the Vantry DeBuff, Pettit Conlet, and Savan Drain, which need to be cleaned out for improved flow of stormwater at a cost not to exceed $102,600.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello.
Mr. Supervisor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask that the motion, could you break the two costs out? Because,
Sure.
the cost that's SAW grant eligible, I'd like to have that, if we could get that specified separately, so that it's clear to the DEQ what the board approved and what it was for.
Right.
Why don't we just make two separate motions?
I'll amend my motion for approve Wade Trim to provide engineering of the Beechwood Stormwater Pump Station and Detention Pond at a cost of $87,600 and to evaluate the drainage of the Vantry DeBuff, Pettit Conlet, and Savan Drain at a cost of $15,000.
Thank you.
Continued support.
All right. We've got a motion with support. Is there any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We do have a couple of closed sessions, but those were the regular agenda items. So item C on our agenda is public comments. We open up the floor for public comments on any item for a 5-minute period.
Good evening. Dennis Reel, concerned resident. I come before the board today with a couple of issues regarding possible future blight in the township. With the amount of foreclosures that is happening in the township and the buying and flipping of houses raises a concern with me regarding the proactive nature of complying the new owners to follow building codes and our local ordinances as they make upgrades to the houses that they're putting back onto the market. When a person flips a house, they sometimes skimp on some of the building codes and ordinances that a person planning on living in the house might follow for the safety of their family. I'm not sure if this will stick to the wall, but maybe the township should look into the creation of some sort of an ordinance regarding the inspection of houses that are bought or sold for code or violations, as many of the communities that surround us now do. If someone guts a house and does a major or even minor repair, and does not come to the township to pull a permit, how can the township ensure the safety and integrity of the construction job? Another blight issue that I would like to see the township address is the constant littering of our public streets by the newspaper carriers that drive down the road and toss the paper on the driveway, side of the road, ditches, bushes. Now, these are not the papers that people subscribe to, but the free ones that are delivered to every single house, like the Advisor or the Select. And I was wondering if the township could maybe talk to the newspapers and kind of see if we could address this problem. And finally, with the public access channel playing messages on a loop cycle with the name of each of the board members and the phone numbers and information regarding township events and charity functions, etc., how about also putting into the loop the phone numbers and web addresses and hours of operations and the name of the persons in charge of the various offices, like the building department, or the ordinance office, or the water and sewer office, or the library. I guess any township office that the public needs to call if a concern arises, they can be sitting at home, flip it on 6, and be able to see who to call, or what time they can go to the office. This information might also be on the web, but having it in multiple locations will only ensure knowledgeable residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cable thing, I can get that up. I just never thought about that. But
Sure.
No problem.
Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. Yep, Mr. York, I think that is a good idea. If it's something your folks in your department could do, it might not be a bad idea to have some
Probably take
slides.
us 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Papers on the road. my best recollection is we have addressed that from the standpoint that we, and Mr. Huth, you may be able to recall, I know that this was,
We sent them a letter previously about littering, and I think it was at your suggestion prior, and they sort of stopped for a while, and then they get lazy again. So we'll have to look in the file, see what we sent, and follow up again.
right, I know that in my neighborhood, a lot of folks will have a little screw hook and they'll hang the paper, but sometimes they toss them at the base of the mailbox. Then regarding the blight, certainly that's something we're sensitive to. One of the major issues that we had was identifying just how or under what circumstances we would have that right to require some increased oversight of projects. And I believe it was probably about 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, this board adopted a safety inspection and vacant structure ordinance. So as a general rule, to summarize that ordinance, if we are aware that a property has been foreclosed, vacant for 30 days, we'll tag the structure. The property owner is required to register that structure as a vacant structure, and before it can be occupied, a certificate of occupancy won't be issued until all three trades go through and inspect the property: building, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical. Not every community has a safety inspection ordinance. And I do know that there are times when residents or new property owners will come in and they're frustrated by that process. And I'm appreciative to hear a resident come and say that they like the idea of some additional oversight because it does generate headaches. But in the long run, we believe that the safety inspection ordinance that we have is effective at trying to avoid properties being flipped and not at least worked on to current standards. A typical example will be someone will come in, they've bought a home, they paid $150 for their safety inspection. They go through, they find a hot water heater that was replaced without a inspection, and they say, well, now I've got to pay for a hot water inspection. This is, this is obtrusive. Now I've got to pay another $150. Well, the reality is that hot water tank is a safety issue. We want to make sure that appliance is working properly. It could be vented improperly. It could lead to carbon monoxide. A lot of issues like that. So the board has taken that on, and although sometimes it results in some frustration, I do believe it's helped in addressing some of those issues of blight. But it does take an active effort to find those properties and identify them before people get in, do the work, get out, and no one knows they were ever vacant. So, are there any other comments or issues? If not, I'd be looking for a motion to enter into closed session. I suppose ultimately it's one closed session to address two items. Yep. Closed session for the discussion of an attorney's opinion regarding AFSCME 1103.14 versus Charter Township of Harrison, and for the discussion of the lawsuit Maynard versus Charter Township of Harrison.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support? Support by Mr. York. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Swakowski is excused. Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkowski?
Yes. Thank you, board and residents.